Welcome to the next session, a focus on packaging. And this session's title is COVID Impact, MegaTrends for Innovation. I'm joined by Paul Jenkins of the Pack Hub. Paul's had a long distinguished career as a brand specialist with a focus on packaging, and in the past few years launched the Pack Hub, which is a community and a hub of insight for packaging innovations. So welcome, Paul. We've also got with us Stefan Orr from SIL, and Stefan is the head of innovation at SIL, or vice president of innovation at SIL. SIL are a leader in innovation for materials for packaging, really at the cutting edge, literally there. And Stefan's joined us. Obviously, there's a relevance to the session, and obviously materials for packaging, in particular for digital printing, is incredibly important, as Inkjet in particular starts to play a growing role in flexible packaging. So what we're going to do is start with Paul, who's going to give us a kind of interesting insight of the impact of COVID on packaging. So over to you, Paul.
And hopefully you can see my screen.
Can.
Yep.
Excellent. Okay. Yeah. So we work, as Marcus said, in sort of packaging innovation projects, and quite clearly over the last 2 or 3 months, COVID-19 has impacted not just on packaging innovation, but across every conceivable industry in the world. And packaging is no different. So I've just got a few slides really just to sort of focus and hone in on some of these additional challenges that we're all now faced with until the virus is under control. And even that is, you know, uncertain in terms of how long this will actually go on for. So in terms of some of the factors that we're seeing, clearly there's a more of a hygiene focus to everyday life, but this is also impacting on packaging. So there are stories of consumers trying to clean their products when they bought them in store, and this has an impact in terms of we're seeing some companies now launching antimicrobial repellents of packaging that have been around for a number of years. They don't necessarily sort COVID-19, or they don't sort COVID-19, but there's a heightened awareness around hygiene generally. And it's just some conjecture that once we're past this COVID-19 pandemic, that sort of that hygiene awareness will continue. So time will obviously tell, and nobody knows until after the event. Other factors that we're seeing, we're throwing away less as consumers. This is a rough and ready chart that I've taken from the RAP website, who are responsible for waste and recycling in the UK. And as you can see, there's been a significant drop in the amount of food waste for 4 key items of bread, chicken, milk, and potatoes. So this is to do with being at home. It's to do with consuming and preparing food at home. But I just think that's quite an interesting change, and maybe some of those good habits that we're now employing may continue post-pandemic when it's all over. And that's a significant drop in a short period of time. As we're all aware, single-use plastic has, over the last couple of years, really taken a battering from a sort of PR point of view. Many businesses are trying to reduce or eradicate the amount of plastic they have in their supply chain. But the material has had a bit of a renaissance over the last few months, because obviously it's been used to good effect to save people's lives. So people are not seeing single-use and throwaway plastic in such a negative light as they have been previously. So maybe that will have some knock-on ramifications when this is all over. There's also an effect on product ranges and what we can actually buy in supermarkets. I can speak from the UK here that a number of supermarkets have reduced their ranges. Tesco's did sell 60 types of sausages a few months ago, and they've significantly reduced that. They need to make the food manufacturing as efficient as possible and not worry about machine changes and pack sizes. So they've reduced the variety of products you can buy. Morrison's have reduced the number of pasta packs from 20 to 6. Now, the world hasn't ended. We're still buying these products. I suspect their sales are the same or even better. So will we go back to the same range proliferation that we've experienced before COVID-19? So that's a big issue. I suspect some of these packs, that niche products that didn't sell very well, will no longer see the light of day.
So, Paul, you think that the variety of product will be getting reduced due to COVID?
I don't think that is definitely what is happening. I can speak for the UK, and I suspect in other markets. This is purely a pragmatic thing where retailers need to, initially when there was food shortages, they were trying to make as much product as quickly as possible. So a way of doing that is to reduce complexity. Now the temptation is to slowly evolve back to a situation where you've got the same range of packs in the future, but I'm just hypothesizing that may not happen.
Interesting, yeah.
We've also seen things like reusable bag bans, the big move from single-use plastic bags in stores and actually bans in many countries. A few states in the US have now reverted back to actually banning reusable bags and going back to single-use. Maybe that habit will go, that's unstabling people's sort of habitual behaviours. Who knows whether we'll go back to what we had before. Reusable cup bans as well. So they were banned just before the coffee shops all closed for hygiene purposes, factors. So it'd be interesting to see if when the coffee shops all start to reopen again, we'll get back into the habit of reusing cups rather than buying single-use ones. A number of outlets over the last year or two have reduced the amount of plastic and packaging in their portfolios, particularly in produce, fruit and veg. Clearly, I mentioned the hygiene slide at the beginning. This is a real challenge for some consumers that don't want to be picking up products they're going to be consuming, knowing that other shoppers have touched the product. So what are the implications for that longer term? We're also shopping differently. So Tesco's in the UK reported a near doubling of online deliveries, and we're moving to a weekly shopping model with top-ups. So again, that has implications for the packaging innovation process. And alongside that, recycling as well. There's obviously recycling centres around the world have closed. Maybe there's a change of priority from consumers. There's talk of corrugated and glass shortages also being reported. So again, that's another impact. The refillable market has been in strong growth over the last year or two. Again, there's talk of this being compromised because these items need to be handled multiple times by many shoppers, continually cleaned and made sort of made free of toxins and whatever. So that could also have an impact. The innovation funnel is stalling. So projects we're hearing are being parked or cancelled. There's a change of priorities. But will we go back to how it was before, and will those projects that have been stalled suddenly rekindle when COVID-19 is over, or will priorities change? So I'm asking a lot of hypothetical questions. I don't necessarily have the answers. If I had the crystal ball, I would probably be doing a different job and be much more wealthy than I am at the moment, which isn't very. Just one example of an example of a packaging innovation that's already come to market on the back of COVID-19. This is a pizza box from Canada, Pizza, and they've introduced a tamper-proof box to ensure that the pizza, once it leaves the oven, the next time it is touched is when the consumer opens it to consume it. So that's an example of an innovation that's come to market specifically because of the COVID-19. And we are also spotting others in our innovation zone database of over 4,000 entries. So that's what I really want to just sort of feed some ideas and some hypotheses about COVID-19 and how it's impacting on packaging innovation.
Okay, so what you're seeing is, as you mentioned, that plastic previous to COVID was seen as the kind of the Antichrist, as it were, and we need to get rid of plastic. Actually, it's come back to the fore. It's become a highly important. So hygiene's overtaken, at least temporarily, hygiene's overtaken sustainability in that regard. There are people that say actually plastic is a good material for recycling. It has a bad image, but actually it's not as bad as all that.
Yeah, I'm not anti-plastic. I'm just reporting what has been going on in the market, and certainly the anti-plastic lobbying of the last couple of years has significantly reduced, hopefully over the last couple of weeks, months.
But hygiene's come as, and it's so maybe they'll, like you say, and also the sense that maybe some innovation projects have stalled, but that there are innovations coming out that are addressing the immediate issues, and that actually stuff like the key pillar of sustainability will continue to be important. So the emphasis may be on materials that are, maybe it's an infrastructure thing, that materials become factored into the entire supply chain cycle, so that actually they're almost sustainable but equally hygienic.
Yes, I did a quick poll on LinkedIn. You can now do polls, and I did one about innovation to my mainly packaging community, and it's still running. But when I last looked, about half had said they were doing more innovation than they were before COVID-19, and about a third were doing less, and the rest were doing about the same. So it's horses for courses. It's different for different people. But maybe the more innovation is different innovation. It's things that they wouldn't have been doing before the pandemic.
Stefan, have you got any comments to make on that?
Yeah, maybe on the sustainability topic, I think the big megatrend sustainability is unstoppable in my eyes. So, and that's good for some reasons. I think I would not say that COVID-19 leads to a rehabilitation of plastics. I think we really should work on make it recyclable. I think that's a good approach. Yeah, absolutely. And for sure, for the moment, nobody is using reuse caps, etc. Yeah, that's a direct impact of COVID-19. But I think next year, once we go through this, there must be a new normal.
Yeah, I think you're right. Then we will have adapted, won't we? It's a little like single-use bags in supermarkets. All of a sudden, taking your own bags, I think you've highlighted this, is a normal thing to do, and reducing and charging for bags and things like that, where it was initially like, wow, no, but actually it's accepted now. So there'll be some adapted changes that will be accepted.
And also the whole sustainability topic is getting also winner of the COVID-19 crisis, because people now realize the direct impact of our daily life if we do not travel, if we stay at home. So the nature recovers partly quicker as we ever thought. So
there's some interesting side effects that are actually positive, aren't there?
Yeah,
absolutely. Thanks for that, Paul. That's really interesting. I want to sort of link in Stefan now with your presentation. Have you stopped slide sharing now, Paul?
I have, yes.
Good man, thanks. Because yes, materials and the flexible packaging for inkjet is highly obviously appealing, but it's also a complicated market for inkjet to access for a variety of reasons. And I guess what you're going to explain is how materials can actually provide an enabler to inkjet to work within flexible packaging, which is interesting.
Yeah, exactly. So when we started with packaging 2 years ago, we really analyzed all the mega trends and the impacts that have an influence on our behavior somehow. And we realized that if you cross-link all the impacts, it will have for sure one influence. Our population will getting more diversified than ever. And if you have a more diversified population, and then you have new demands, you have more number of products out there in the market, and you have you need to have different supply chains to react on that. So, and here I think that's exactly the niche where digital printing can solve and help people to make their businesses better, or to be a modern supplier in the future.
Yeah, and with the impact that eventually, I suppose that what you're saying is there's a general decrease in the number of or the volume of runs. Yeah, so
yeah,
there'll be a point, won't there? Economically, it won't make sense to print analog, I would imagine.
Exactly. Yeah. This was our idea when we developed Artisio. So Artisio packaging is somehow a packaging material that can be directly printed and is then ready for the packing process. So, and it's fully functional. You have all the barrier properties that you need for your products, and you have all the sealing properties you need to pack it. So you do not have to wait for getting ready to pack and to print. So you can do that together if you like. And this is exactly what I described. You see on the downside the size per orders, and on the left hand side the volumes, and the blue line somehow represents the demands on flexible packaging today. Yeah, where you see standard order sizes of 20,000 square meters of materials with the same printing, for example. Don't nail me down. I draw the lines by hand because it represents the trends that I have described. And if you now somehow bring in the higher diversity in our population, society, and the demand of smaller product lines, then there's an demand on smaller order sizes, maybe in the area of 2,500 square meters or even lower. And this is somehow an operational window where the existing printing technology and supply chain are struggling to provide professional solutions at the end of the day.
And it's and it's interesting as well, because it seems that you've taken an analytical look at this and found a space in the sort of middle that Inkjet can play a role. It's not a replacement role, is it?
No.
No.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't get me wrong. So I think we cannot talk about replace rotogravure printing. It's just an addition to that, and maybe it's in the future necessary addition for existing suppliers to be able to provide the product adequate to the market. I don't know. This is something what we are currently developing, but for sure, this providing 500 square meters of material, 1,000 square meters of material is really, really painful, and in most cases not really possible. Or you have to work with not professional solutions. But digital printing really enables professional printing and packing exactly in this space.
Yeah, and it's also, as you've said, I think before, in the sense that one of the things COVID seems to reveal is, albeit that a lot of packaging production is, by its very nature, relatively close to its audience, but you actually, or its customer base, you actually see Inkjet playing a greater role because there will be even more decentralization. Is that right?
Yes.
In the future,
this could be maybe one impact of COVID, if now people realize, or the supply chain depends on 2 or 3 players, maybe spread it all around the globe, and not able to provide the products because the borders are closed or the plants are closed. And then maybe one on the other will take control on the supply chain. And here also digital printing gives the freedom to control the whole topic. So if you make it on the like this, so here we have the supply chain on the downside, then digital printing would even enable brand owners or customers to become a printer, if you want it like that. So this is the power of the technology, but for sure it enables also converters here to be more flexible.
Yeah, definitely. It's empowering, isn't it? And I think that's one of the key things that I can see from this, that the older model of supply chain being that centralized model, mass production, of course, it's very efficient in cost and mostly efficient when the market's in a normal state, but when under stress, you can't get products to shops, you can't, so actually having a more agile solution makes a lot of sense. So actually I think underlined by what you've said, and also in the survey, people are expecting to see an increase in demand once the market returns, because people will want to, or businesses will want to, realign their production chains for that reason. And also because I think it provides a clearer understanding of competitive advantage. And I think that's one of the things that I've sensed will come from this and it's both anecdotally in the conversations I've had, what you're explaining, Paul, what other people have talked to me about, is that a general acceleration of change in a shorter space of time, perhaps where things were moving anyway, aside of the hygiene issue perhaps, but actually for digital printing, it's in some areas such as packaging and biomedical and pharmaceutical, we've seen a big increase in demand. So this Artisio packaging actually has come to the market potentially at, albeit a stressful time, quite a positive time as well in some respects.
Yes, absolutely. So we started with the product last year in autumn. So we launched somehow in January. We had a very good start. We had a lot of collaboration, and I can confirm also what Paul said. So particularly in April, we saw that people really somehow not stopped, but went slower through the innovation and are not that open anymore for new things. But also now we realize that the focus is back, and this is really good to see.
Brilliant. Okay, well, thanks. That's superb. To you both. I don't know if either of you got any sort of final comments you may want to make before we kind of conclude. Paul?
Business will continue. There will always be opportunities to get your product out there, and it's just about adapting to the very difficult circumstances. The other thing is that nobody really knows the full impact of what's going on. A lot of conjecture and hypotheses at the moment. So interesting to do this webinar again in 18 months' time and review what we've said now.
No, that's right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it does seem to be changing quickly, and I think also with epidemics and so on, they sort of say when they'll reach a point, I think, where normality will, to some extent, will just return, because the population will start mitigating or start thinking, well, actually the risk now is manageable, we're going to get on with things. Maybe not there yet, but it will reach that point at some point. And like you say, adapting, moving forward, trying things out, experimenting, all of those things, whilst not guaranteeing success, is a far better strategy than sitting on your hands and waiting for the better times to return. So listen, thanks to you both. That was really interesting, really insightful, and overall really positive. So appreciate you joining the Futureprint Virtual Summit, and look forward to the next one.